Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to The Discriminating Gamer, the board game review show that was always a little more die-hard Reginald VelJohnson than Family Matters Reginald VelJohnson. Today we're going to go ahead and take a look at Warpgate from Wolff Designa. In Warpgate from Wolff Designa, 1 to 6 players take on the role of various factions around the galaxy as they vie for the most victory points, which I assume means galactic hegemony. Now, the game board is a collection of tiles that you place together depending on player count. Now, each player is going to have their very own warp gate, and there's going to be a number of surrounding planets that are grouped together in sectors. Players are going to receive a number of ships in their color, as well as their research drone in their color. And you're also going to get a number of action cards, I believe 12 action cards, and you're also going to get a number of tactics cards. Now, you're going to have like a special hero that's unique to your faction. You're going to swap out one of your tactics cards with the same letter on it as the hero and put that hero card in there. So you got like a special superpower tactic card in your deck. You're going to draw 4 of your action cards. Now, you have a player board. Now, your player board has a space for 4 cards. And they say 1x, 2x, 3x, and 4x. And that's because, depending on where you place it, it's going to be more or less powerful. If you place a card on the 1x, it's only going to be 1 powerful. But if you place it on the 4, it'll be 4 times as powerful. So it's a very interesting mechanic here. How it works is your action cards you're going to play every turn are going to have kind of a top action and a bottom action. So essentially, I'm going to play one of my cards, then the next guy, and the next guy. We're all going to play one of our cards, then the next guy, and the next guy. We're going to do that so we've each played 4 cards, and that's a round. So there's 4 turns during a round. Now, some of the actions that you can take are you can move. Essentially, there's cards that let you just move your ships, recon and maneuver, and they let you move different numbers of ships. And how you do that is essentially you count the spaces between planets. Your ships can never just be out floating in space. They have to start on a planet and end on a planet. And you count the range is the number of spaces in between those planets. So you can move units there, but you can also move to attack, or things like concentrate and advance. There's a skirmish. You can do those kinds of actions if you want to kind of move your ships and attack with them. You can do a research action where essentially you move your drone from whatever planet it's on to another planet in order to take a research card. There are actually 2 face-up research cards at any time that have certain colored worlds on it. You simply move one of your research drone rather to one of those colored worlds, and you can claim that research card, and you get that ability for the rest of the game. You can also deploy ships. You can bring ships into your warp gate with one action. There's another action that actually lets you reinforce ships on planets that you control. There's also a control action. Essentially, you can place outposts on these worlds, or if depending on how many you control, you can actually bump them up to full control. You take full control over that planet. If you take full control over the planets in the sector, you can actually gain an objective card. And objective cards are ways that are going to help you win the game. You actually get one objective card at the beginning of the game, and you're going to collect more of those as the game goes on because they are like victory point bonanzas. There's also a trade action. Essentially, you can move your ships between trade worlds. Some of the worlds have the trade icon. If you move ships between trade worlds, you can actually get a trade good. Trade good is worth 3 victory points at the end of the game, but you can also spend it. Even if it's spent, it's still worth 3 victory points. But some actions in the game will allow that to be refreshed as well. Finally, you can promote. If you promote a unit, essentially what that means is you can get a card from the tactics deck, from the mixed together tactics deck. You can take that and add that to your tactics hands. That gives you more powerful cards that you can use during combat. Now, if instead of actually playing a card, you can always just choose to draw a card to bring your hand up, so that way if there's an action you just don't want to do that round, you can essentially skip it by drawing a card, giving you more options for the next turn. Now, when you play one of these cards that actually get you into combat, the advanced, skirmish, and concentrate cards that get you into combat, essentially what you're going to do is you're going to add up the strength of your ships. You're going to go ahead and you're going to play the combat cards. And combat cards are essentially going to multiply the number of ships that you have. Whoever has the most total strength wins, but some of the cards are going to say you must lose this number of ships, you must lose this number of ships. So theoretically, you could lose all your ships but still win the combat. Losers have to retreat, though, when the combat is over. And that is essentially the game. You're going around and around, you're researching, you're moving your ships, you're conquering other worlds. You're trying to take control over them. You're trying to get and fulfill your objectives. If you can fulfill those objectives, like I say, that's a lot of points. But you can get points from trade goods. You can get points from science cards. You can get points, I believe, through some of your upgrade cards. So you're just going around and around trying to get all of these different ways to gain points. And that's going to bring you in conflict with your neighbors around you. Now, if you begin a round and there are no more science cards come out or objective cards come out or there are no more trade goods, then that marks it as the end of the last round. As soon as that round is over, then whoever has the most victory points wins Warpgate. I'd heard Warpgate described as a possible TI4 killer. I'm going to tell you right now, this game is not a TI4 killer by any stretch of the imagination. It seems like ever since TI4's been out there and been popular, people have been trying to come up with a kind of space opera game that plays in 2 or 3 hours as opposed to the 6+ hours of TI4, which is the big drawback of TI4, TI3, TI4. This one doesn't kill Twilight Imperium at all. It doesn't, and I'll tell you why it doesn't. It doesn't because there's really not a lot of negotiation in Warpgate. Not like in TI4. In TI4, you're constantly negotiating. You're constantly striking deals with other players. In Warpgate, it's pretty compact, and you've got to have combat frequently. Combat and losing worlds is a lot less consequential here than it is in TI4. So that's one of the things that's important. You're going to see worlds change hands frequently in this game. For all that, I wouldn't call this strictly a war game, but the combat is much more common and less consequential. I'm not saying it's not consequential, but it's less consequential than it would be in TI4. But it is missing that negotiation aspect, and to me, that's the heart and soul of TI4, so it's not a TI4 killer for that reason. Let me talk to you about what I like about Warpgate. I do like the fact that it's compact, that you're fighting, that there's a lot of conflict, that it's built into the game. You can't win this game just by turtling. Sooner or later, you got to go places to do research. You got to get stuff for your objectives or for trade. If you want the most victory points, you want to win the game, you're going to be butting heads with people. And you can forgive it a lot easier here than you could in TI4, again, because it's less consequential. It's easier to come back from. So there's that. But I like that it's a conflict-rich game. I think that's pretty cool. I like the flavor of the game. The tech cards add spice and sugar. The promotions add spice and sugar to combat. And combat is really cool here. I really like the way combat works. It's not really deterministic because you do have cards that you're playing, and they do some funky things. You can play a card that's going to win you that combat, but it still may screw you. It may take away all or most of your ships. So I mean, there's cool stuff there that I like with combat. The objectives are fun. You're trying to. You may get objectives that you just can't fulfill, but that's like TI4, right? You get objectives that you just, it's calling for something that's over there on that side of the board, and you just don't have any way to get to it. It happens, but it's still generally some of the objective missions are pretty fun and pretty interesting, and again, give you a little spice, a little sugar. I like laying the cards down in the different spaces that give you increased power for that card. It kind of reminded me of the Civilization A New Dawn. The way you would play cards in certain places and where they're played in certain places give you more options and make the cards more powerful, I should say. I really like that quite a bit. I think that is so clever and so fun because, well, I want to play this card now, but if I wait, I can go further or I can do something else with it. And to me, that's really interesting, and it's good choices when you play the cards and where you're going to play and how you're going to manage your hand. Really like that quite a bit. So, I mean, I like the game, and I got to tell you, everybody that I played with liked this game too. We thought it was fun, we thought it was engaging, we thought it was clever, and just a fun game. Now, this was, I believe, a Kickstarter, and it's out, and I don't know if it's in retail yet, I'm not sure, but it's a fun game. I think if you like a good space game with combat and objectives that's got kind of a veneer of a TI4, but not the heart, obviously. I think you'll like this. I like this game. I had a lot of fun with it. It was a fun game. Not a TI4 killer, but a fun game in its own right. So, recommendation for Discriminating Gamer for Warpgate is, and you get a chance, buy it. Thank you once again for joining us today on The Discriminating Gamer. As always, we ask you to please leave a comment for us on YouTube, on Board Game Geek, on our Facebook page, or on thediscriminatinggamer.com. We ask you to please like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter. We are The Discriminating Gamer, and remember, ladies and gentlemen, when somebody asks you whether or not Die Hard is a Christmas movie, you say no. It's a Reginald VelJohnson movie.
Please somebody help me on my feet again, and I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know where I've been. Please somebody help me on the solid ground. It's a long time, and I'll be dying. Once a year I wind up in the band.
Reginald VelJohnson, Reginald VelJohnson, Reginald VelJohnson.